The first time death came to me, I was 19. My lungs wheezed from pneumonia. The windows of the hospital banged and crashed from the worst storm of the year. Death stood in the door. The silver blade of the scythe flashed in the lightning. "It's your time," Death said. "Spare me until next year," I begged. The tears evaporated on my feverish skin as I coughed. "Everyone always wants another month. Another year." "Please, I'm getting married tomorrow. Arthur is my love, my life. Let me have 1 year and then I'll go with you." I closed my eyes and tried to swallow my despair. I would die young, just like my parents. The creature raised his bony hand above my head. It hesitated. "I will wait until next year, but another must go in your place. Can you live with that knowledge on your conscience?" I was surprised. Why was it doing this? Perhaps it felt pity for me. Maybe it offered a deal to everyone. I didn't care. It only mattered that the creature was willing to bargain. My muscles burned like hot coals. What did I care about the fate of some unknown person? After all, I would only have to live with the knowledge for a year. I agreed. Death disappeared at once. When I woke the next morning, my chills had gone. My breath no longer rattled. The hospital nurse checked me over. "I don't know how, but you seem to be recovering," she said as she leaned over me. "I thought you were on death's door." Unable to contain my excitement, I told her about my visit from death. I was sure the nurse would be equally amazed. Instead, her eyes went wide and she backed slowly out the door. The nurse returned with the doctor, a concerned look on his face. Instead of donning my wedding dress, I found myself being forced into a straitjacket. After all, no sane person would believe in death as an actual creature. The doctor said that almost dying must have affected my brain. They were determined to fix me. I insisted I didn't need to be fixed. Instead of listening, the doctors ordered medications delivered in sharp needles, or therapies like dunking me in a bath of ice water. One of them tried to starve the devil out of me by withholding food from me for days. Finally, I learned to be silent when the doctors asked me questions. I couldn't prove I was telling the truth. Perhaps the doctors were right that my specter of death had been nothing more than a hallucination. My high fever could have made me see things that weren't actually there. I debated my own sanity as I lay for hours on my dirty mattress. The door opened. "Arthur!" I cried. Tears filled my eyes at seeing him. "Arthur!" My fiancé hurried over to me and began untying the straps. "Are you okay?" I hesitated, considering whether to tell him my encounter with death. Would he believe me, or would he call the doctors for another treatment? It was one thing for everyone else to think I was crazy, but I don't think I could survive if Arthur agreed with them. "Never mind. I can see you're tired. They've treated you terribly here." Arthur's voice interrupted my thoughts. "They should be more understanding to patients, especially with how sick you were. If I had been with you—" Arthur shook his head. "I've managed to get you released. We're going home." He picked me up. I curled into his smell of wood smoke and pine needles. Even though I felt safe with Arthur, I held my breath until after we had left the asylum far behind us. In the carriage, Arthur looked distracted. He looked distant, and his forehead creased with deep furrows. Normally, he was always smiling and laughing. "What's the matter?" I asked. Arthur shook his head. "Sorry. Father Jim died in his sleep last week. We'll have to delay our wedding until another priest can arrive to perform the ceremony. Still, I suppose I should be grateful, all this considered." He smiled and kissed me again. In the back of my mind, I thought of death and wondered. Arthur and I were finally married in a wonderful ceremony. My simple cotton dress didn't bother Arthur. He said he would have still married me even if I was wearing rags. I turned toward Arthur's family during the vows. His father wiped his eyes. His sister and mother smiled. I kissed Arthur as if it may have been the last time in my life. "You look beautiful," his father told me afterward. I couldn't regret my deal with death. It had been worth it for this moment. After a lonely childhood alone as an orphan, I finally had a real family. Then death returned. I hiked near the river, humming softly to myself. It had been a year since my illness in the asylum. A small bush of raspberries hung off the bank above the water. Arthur loved raspberries. I thought they would be a pleasant surprise for him when I returned home. I stretched toward them when my foot slipped. With a cry, I fell into the river. The water swept me downriver. I gulped desperately for air. My heart pounded as I fought to swim to the surface, but the current buffeted me around. Finally, I caught a fallen tree, but the rotten wood groaned under my weight. It cracked loudly as it threatened to splinter to pieces and throw me back into the deadly water. Death appeared, standing on the tree as if the creature weighed nothing. "It is your time." This has been Death Returns by Lynette Rogenbach. Narrated by Sky Alley.